The Last Order, a military family drama thriller. The text arrived at 2:47 a.m. By 2:48 a.m., Alyssa Milano had already decided to change her entire life. The screen glowed blue in the darkness of her naval officers' quarters aboard the USS Resolute. Alyssa had seen combat deployments. She had navigated through 3 hurricanes on active duty. She had held dying sailors in her arms and kept her composure long enough to get them home. Nothing, not one single moment in her 11 years of decorated military service, had prepared her for 8 words from her little sister. "I'm quitting my job, you'll take care of us." Alyssa read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change, no matter how many times her eyes swept across the screen. They sat there, bold and demanding, the way Renee had always been, expecting the world to bend around her convenience, assuming that somewhere in the universe, a safety net with Alyssa's name stitched into it was always ready to catch her fall. Alyssa set the phone down on her steel-framed desk. She looked at the framed photo beside it, her mother, her father, herself in her white dress uniform at graduation, and Renee, 17 years old with a lazy smile and stars in her eyes that everyone mistook for ambition, but Alyssa always recognized as expectation. She picked the phone back up. She typed 4 words. "That's not on me." She hit send. Then she opened her email, found the contract she had been sitting on for 6 weeks, a private maritime security consultancy based out of Lisbon, Portugal, offering her a position that tripled her current salary, full autonomy, and a start date of Monday, and she signed it. By 3:02 a.m., Lieutenant Commander Alyssa Milano had officially resigned from the United States Navy and accepted a job on another continent. By 3:03 a.m., her phone was ringing. She let it go to voicemail. The family drama had begun. 3 days before her flight to Lisbon, her mother called with the kind of calm voice that meant catastrophe. "Your grandmother passed last night," Elena Milano said, peaceful in her sleep, the way she always wanted. Alyssa closed her eyes. She had loved her grandmother Ruth with the fierce and quiet devotion of someone who understood what it meant to be underestimated by the people who should have cheered loudest. Ruth had been a military wife, a silent fortress, a woman who had buried a husband, raised 4 children alone after his death in Vietnam, and still managed to build a modest estate in the hills outside Charleston, South Carolina. "The will reading is Friday," Elena continued. "You need to be there." "Mom, I have a flight Monday." Friday, Alyssa, family first. It was the Milano family motto, spoken whenever someone needed Alyssa to sacrifice something, never when she needed something in return. She changed her flight. She should have known the moment she walked into that Charleston law office and saw Renee sitting in the front row wearing a dress that cost more than 2 months of their grandmother's pension checks, that something was already wrong. Renee had their mother beside her, and beside their mother sat a man Alyssa had never seen before, broad shoulders, expensive watch, the kind of smile that lawyers and con artists share equally. "Who is that?" Alyssa whispered to her cousin Dana as she slid into the seat beside her. Dana leaned close. "That is Marcus Webb, Renee's boyfriend. Apparently they have been together 4 months. I have never heard his name once." "Neither had any of us," Dana said quietly, "until 3 weeks ago when Renee suddenly started bringing him to every family dinner. 3 weeks ago was exactly when grandmother Ruth's health had taken its final decline." Alyssa felt something cold move through her chest. She was a naval intelligence officer. She had been trained to recognize patterns, to read rooms, to identify the moment when coincidence stopped being coincidence and started being strategy. She watched Marcus Webb lean over and whisper something in Renee's ear. Renee smiled. It was not the smile of a grieving granddaughter. It was the smile of someone who already knew how a story ended. The attorney, a silver-haired man named Gerald Howell, opened his folder and cleared his throat. "The estate of Ruth Evelyn Milano, totaling approximately $2.3 million in property, investments, and assets, is to be distributed as follows." Alyssa watched her mother fold her hands in her lap. "To Elena Milano, I leave the family home on Carver Hill Road and $200,000, with my love and my gratitude for every Sunday dinner she never missed." Elena pressed a handkerchief to her eyes. "To my granddaughter Alyssa Milano, I leave the investment portfolio valued at approximately $900,000, my personal letters, my military husband's medals, and a key to a safety deposit box at First Federal Bank on Morrison Drive. She will know what to do with what she finds inside. She always does. The room was silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then Renee stood up. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was perfectly controlled. "Can you repeat that?" Gerald Howell looked at her over his glasses. "I can read it again, certainly." "That cannot be right," Renee said. "I spoke with Grandma Ruth every week. She told me she was going to take care of me. She knew I was going through a difficult time. She promised." "Miss Milano," the attorney said carefully, "the document before me is dated 8 months ago, witnessed, notarized, and entirely legal." She was sick. She was not thinking clearly. "Renee," Alyssa said her name once quietly. Renee turned to look at her. The mask slipped just enough, just for a second. Alyssa saw it, not grief, not hurt, not even genuine shock. She saw calculation. She saw the moment a plan that had not worked tried to find a new angle. "This is not over," Renee said. She sat back down. Marcus Webb put his hand over hers. He was still smiling. Alyssa made a mental note of that smile. That evening, sitting alone in her grandmother's kitchen with a cup of coffee and the old woman's handwriting on letters stacked before her, Alyssa allowed herself to feel the grief she had not had time for all day. Ruth Milano had been the only person in this family who never asked Alyssa to be smaller, who never handed her a problem and called it love. The letters were personal, warm, and full of the ordinary details of a long life well lived. But the last letter, the one on top, the one sealed with Alyssa's name written in Ruth's careful cursive, that one was different. She opened it slowly. "My darling Alyssa, if you are reading this, then I am finally at rest and you are sitting in my kitchen, because that is where you always went when the world got too loud. I know you. I have always known you better than you knew yourself. I need to tell you something I should have told you sooner, about the safety deposit box. About your father, and about the secret that your sister has been trying to find for the last 2 years. Your father did not die in that accident in 2019. At least the man we buried was not Thomas Milano." Alyssa stopped breathing. She read the line again. She read it a third time. The man we buried was not Thomas Milano. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. It was the thing the Navy had given her that no one could ever take away, the ability to stay perfectly still in the center of a storm. She set the letter down. She picked up her coffee cup. She took one slow sip. Then she kept reading. "Your father came to me 6 months before he supposedly died. He was frightened, Alyssa, a kind of frightened I had never seen in a man before. He had stumbled into something at work, something involving a defense contractor, falsified procurement records, and a name I recognized. A name inside this family. He had evidence. He had hidden it. He told me if anything ever happened to him, I was to make sure only you received the key. Renee knows about the money trail. She does not know what the evidence actually proves. But the man she brought into this family 4 months ago, Marcus Webb, he is not her boyfriend. I had him investigated. He works for the company your father exposed. Get to that bank, my love. Get there before anyone else does. And trust no one in this house until you know which ones knew and which ones were kept in the dark. I am sorry I waited so long. I was afraid, but you were never afraid, not once in your life. All my love always, Grandma Ruth." Alyssa folded the letter. She slid it into the inside pocket of her jacket, directly against her chest. She sat for another 30 seconds in perfect silence. Then she stood, rinsed her coffee cup, set it on the drying rack exactly the way her grandmother had always insisted upon, and walked out of the kitchen. She had a safety deposit box to open, a dead father to find, and a man with an expensive watch to investigate. She also had a flight to Lisbon on Monday. She was going to need every hour between now and then. She pulled out her phone as she walked to her rental car. She had one contact she trusted completely, Major Daniel Reeves, former Army intelligence, currently working private security consulting out of Washington, D.C. They had served together twice. He had saved her life once. She had saved his twice. The math was still being settled between them. He picked up on the second ring. "Alyssa Milano calling at 9 p.m. on a Thursday," Daniel said. "What did someone do?" "I need a background search on a man named Marcus Webb. Deep dive. Military, financial, corporate affiliations, the works. I need it by tomorrow morning." A pause. That fast. That fast. What are we looking at? A dead father who might not be dead, a defense contractor scandal, and a sister who I genuinely cannot tell anymore is a victim or a collaborator. Another pause, longer this time. I will call you in 4 hours, Daniel said. She drove to the bank first thing Friday morning when it opened at 9. The safety deposit box was exactly where Ruth's letter described. The key fit perfectly. The box contained a single encrypted hard drive, a handwritten ledger with dates, names, and dollar amounts going back 7 years, and a photograph. The photograph showed her father, alive, standing outside what looked like a European train station, holding a newspaper. The date on the newspaper was March 14, 2021. 14 months after his funeral. Alyssa stared at her father's face. He looked older, thinner, afraid in the particular way of a man who had been running for a long time. But it was him. The scar on his left hand from the fishing accident when she was 9 years old was visible in the photograph. Thomas Milano was alive, and someone in her family had either helped him disappear or had been trying to find him ever since. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. Your man Marcus Webb, he said without greeting. Real name is Marcus Whitfield, former private contractor, 3 years with a defense firm called Apex Meridian Solutions. They are currently under a sealed federal investigation for procurement fraud. Alyssa's grip on the phone tightened by a fraction. Apex Meridian, she said. That name is in the ledger. Then your father did his homework, Daniel said. Alyssa, there is more. Webb or Whitfield has been flagged twice in the last 18 months for surveillance activities. He was spotted outside a naval installation in Norfolk 6 months ago. Norfolk, where Alyssa had been stationed. He had not just been watching her family, he had been watching her. He thought I had the evidence, she said quietly. And then your grandmother died and the will pointed directly at you, Daniel confirmed. He used your sister to get close. Whether she knows who he really is, that I cannot tell you. Alyssa thought about Renee in that law office. The smile, the performance, the way Marcus Webb's hand had covered hers with practiced ease. She thought about the girl her sister used to be before their father died, before the supposed death. A girl who was careless and spoiled, but genuinely, fundamentally, incapable of cruelty. She thought about how grief changes people. How a lonely, financially struggling woman might be swept up by a charming man who asked all the right questions and never let his real ones show. Victim, she decided. Renee was a victim, used as an instrument by a man who needed proximity to this family. That did not mean Renee was safe. People being used by dangerous men rarely were. I need one more thing, Alyssa said. I need to find my father. The silence on the line lasted exactly 3 seconds. The train station in the photo, Daniel said. Send it to me. She sent it. 17 minutes later, he called back. Zurich, that is the main station in Zurich. And Alyssa, your Lisbon contract, the firm that hired you, Atlantic Shield Consultancy. I just ran their corporate structure. She already knew what he was going to say. They are a subsidiary of Apex Meridian, she said. 4th level down, clean enough that most people would never find it. She had almost walked directly into the trap. A job offer that appeared out of nowhere, that tripled her salary, that pulled her away from the United States to a country with more lenient extradition arrangements. They had not sent Webb after the evidence. They had tried to neutralize the person most capable of using it. She had signed that contract at 3 a.m. in a moment of emotional impulse. It was the only time in 11 years that her feelings had overridden her training. She would not make that mistake again. Cancel the contract, she said, and book me a flight to Zurich. Wednesday. Monday, she said, same day, different destination. She walked out of the bank into the warm Charleston morning. The air smelled like jasmine and distant rain. She thought about her grandmother sitting in that kitchen for months, carrying this secret alone, too frightened to speak and too determined to let it die with her. She thought about her father standing in a train station in Switzerland, looking over his shoulder, waiting for the day someone came who he could finally trust. She thought about Renee, who deserved to know the truth about the man she thought she loved and the father she thought she had lost. She thought about 11 years of service, of discipline, of choosing duty over every personal thing that had ever mattered to her. She had spent her whole life taking care of the mission. It was time to take care of her family. She called Renee. It rang 4 times, then her sister's voice, guarded and defensive, came through. "What do you want, Alyssa?" "I need you to listen to me very carefully," Alyssa said, "and I need you to do it without Marcus in the room." A pause. "Why?" "Because I know who he really is, and I know that you don't, and I am not going to let him hurt you, Renee. Not because you deserve my protection after that text you sent, but because Dad would want me to, and he is more present in this situation than either of us knew." The silence that followed was the longest of Alyssa's life. Then quietly, she heard a door close on Renee's end of the line. "I'm alone," Renee whispered. "Tell me everything." And Lieutenant Commander Alyssa Milano, decorated naval officer, the woman who had navigated hurricanes and combat zones, and the quiet devastation of a family that had taken her for granted her entire life, took a breath and began. The truth, after all, was the most powerful weapon she had ever carried. And she had never once been afraid to use it. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needed to read it today. Drop a comment below. Would you have signed that contract? Would you have answered that text differently? Let the conversation begin.